You know what I realized? The fact that we can actually make videos about the draft lottery now, and it's perfectly reasonable to include the Vancouver Canucks in these talks. Last year, for the 2019-2020 season, every time we spoke about the draft lottery, it was always the same teams. Oh, it's Detroit, it's Ottawa, LA, San Jose, and New Jersey, Buffalo, and those teams. Now, because the draft lottery is going to be, with all the worst teams in the league statistically speaking, the Vancouver Canucks kind of belong there. And that's kind of funny to me. Just the first kind of review I wanted to get out there when it comes to the 2021 NHL Draft Lottery. But the reason we're talking about the lottery here today is because we had ourselves an article that was published by Pierre LeBrun on The Athletic, talking about how there are apparently going to be some really big changes to the draft lottery system. Now, The Athletic is paid for material, so I'm going to leave a link in the description to the article and read it if you have The Athletic. But what we're doing here is going over a few other sources to highlight what exactly it is that LeBrun brings up. So, there's this article over here on The Score talking about how Bill Daly, the bald guy who flips over the cards during the draft lottery segments, he confirms that the NHL is indeed working on a change for their draft lottery process. Take a look at the quote here. This is on Pierre LeBrun's article as written out onto The Score. The Score is a free publication, by the way, so that's why I'm reading this one over here. There are a lot of people around the league that simply felt that a team like the Detroit Red Wings, undergoing a real rebuild, 23 points behind the 30th place team last year, should not have been picking fourth. And that's kind of one thing. Before we go any further, I know people are going to comment in the comment section below, oh, that's what you get for tanking, bro. The Red Wings, they put themselves in a position to lose, and they reaped the consequences of tanking. They didn't draft first overall. You weren't watching the Red Wings if you're saying that. The Red Wings were legitimately really, really bad. And it was so much to the point that anybody who actually watched the games could tell that this wasn't a team that was intentionally trying to lose. I said this before, but sure, they didn't do anything to actually help them try to win in acquiring assets that would make them better on the ice, but after years and years and years of making the playoffs, this is the outcome, where 25 years after your legacy was cemented over and over and over again in the postseason, you are bad. And this is a really bad team. They're supposed to be bad, so it's not that big of a deal, but at the end of the day, it wasn't even a tank job. It was just them being themselves, which is how they ended up last in the league by a long shot, and they drafted fourth to show for it. Continuing on with the article here on The Score, in October, a number of the league's GMs reportedly called on the league to increase the odds of winning the draft lottery for the teams that finish lowest in the standings. The article then finishes off by talking about the system when it was put into place, and how the league has made small tweaks since the system was introduced, giving the bottom-ranked teams higher odds of moving down and other lottery clubs better chances of moving into the top three. So, pretty much what we have is a system here that does what the system does, where we have postseason teams that make the return-to-play bubble winning first overall, which is what we had in the most recent draft lottery, where Alexis Lafreniere went to the New York Rangers, who had a chance of actually making it in the postseason, but they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes in their play-in series. We had a chance where one of each of the 8 play-in series losers were going out there in another lottery to try and get Lafreniere, where New York eventually won. You could see the problem that arises when you have a Detroit team that is so bad, they're drafting fourth. Meanwhile, you have a Toronto team, an Edmonton team, and a Pittsburgh team that potentially could have gotten first overall. So it appears that the NHL general managers are out here and saying, okay, why is the system like this, where the teams that are outside of the bottom of the league have a very significant chance at winning? And I get it, it's different this year, or at least, no, not this year, last year, because of the return to play and the fact that you had 8 teams that did not go to the return to play. It was a different system last year, and I get that, but the fact does remain that other teams and general managers appear to be asking for higher weighted odds for the worst teams in the league, which last year would have been Detroit, Ottawa, San Jose, LA, those guys. Here's an article over here on actually not even an article, this is just a post on the Detroit Red Wings subreddit. It's talking about these changes. It's posted by a user named Cortiva. Very good post over here. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go ahead and check that out. It talks about the same Pierre LeBrun article. Take a look at this. Here are some very interesting ideas. Pierre LeBrun spoke with a dozen or so NHL general managers and brought up an idea he thought popped up above the rest. Improve the odds of winning the lottery for the bottom-ranked teams, but in doing so, the caveat: any team drafting in the top 3 one year cannot do so the following year, or some version like that, limiting repeat customers at the top. He dove into a few variations or tweaks on this. The only one that stuck out to the writer of this Reddit post was that teams higher up in the draft would only be able to move up 3 spots. So that's a really interesting set of ideas here. Obviously, it's just Pierre LeBrun spitting, going off on what he believes might be interesting to consider, where the teams that are ranked like 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, or 14th could only move up 3 spots, or the ones that actually do win the top 3 spots, first, second, and third, cannot win first, second, and third the next year. That eliminates the problem that I had with the New York Rangers winning 2nd overall in 2019 and 1st overall in 2020. And the New Jersey Devils winning 1st overall in 2017 and 1st overall in 2019. It's crazy how much these repeat winners get up here and, have just done their thing, getting these young prospects and getting these players, where you have other teams like Detroit, like Vancouver, that were dropping off significantly, like Colorado back in 2017. Colorado, by the way, they don't really care that they dropped to 4th overall in 2017. They got Cale Makar. They got one of the best players in the draft. They're fine. But it would be kind of weird for the other teams this year if you have a system where you limit the top 3 finishing potential, I guess, for the teams that end up 1, 2, and 3 in 2021. Because, as we've noted the entire time, man, this year's draft is a lot weaker compared to 2020 and 2022. If you take some of the top guys in 2021 and you say, okay, boom, magic wand, I just struck you. The 2021 draft class is now eligible for 2020 last year. The guys at the top of the 2021 draft, Owen Power, Brant Clark, Atu Ratu, Luke Hughes, these guys would be Jake Sanderson territory in 2020. These guys would be Jack Quinn territory, would be Alexander Holtz or Cole Perfetti territory. And that's just me trying to illustrate the ceiling of talent that exists in this year's draft compared to last year, where last year you had Stützle, Byfield, and Lafreniere, all of whom probably would have been higher up in 1st overall locks if they were eligible for 2021. And in 2022, you have Savoy, Wright, and Lambert, 3 guys who could probably be on that Alexis Lafreniere caliber, all going in the same draft. So, if there's a draft this year where the 2021 1st, 2nd, and 3rd overall teams are not allowed to get 1st, 2nd, and 3rd overall in the next few years, I honestly would be kind of upset. Like, I'd be pissed off. Taking a look at it and be like, okay, well, the Red Wings are going to draft Owen Power 1st overall. He's going to spend another year in the University of Michigan, and we're still going to be bad in 2021, 2022. We might be the worst team in the league again in 2021-2022 because the Red Wings are not a team that are going to bounce back up quickly. So once the 2022 draft lottery comes up, all of a sudden we're disqualified from competing for the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall picks because we got number 1 last year in a weaker draft. We're missing out on one of the 3 franchise talents at the top of the 2022 draft in Wright, Savoy, or Lambert because of this rule that was implemented last year. It's already been done with New Jersey and New York, these teams getting the top picks consecutively in a few years. So it does feel kind of unfair, in my opinion, to implement this now where you have a draft that is weaker than the ones around it, and you have teams that look like they might be bad for more than a year or two, like Detroit, like maybe Ottawa. You could dare and say Vancouver. It'd be cool for Vancouver, in my opinion, because no matter what happens, I think the Canucks are going to be bad enough to finish with a draft pick that would allow them to draft Luke Hughes. That is assuming, of course, that Luke Hughes stays in the realm of projection that he is in right now, which is about top 10-ish. Some people have him a little bit later than that. So I think if the Vancouver Canucks have an opportunity to get Luke Hughes, that would be the best case scenario, in my opinion. I like Brant Clark, don't get me wrong. I love the way that he plays, but I do think the Vancouver Canucks could benefit a little bit more of the two-way mobile kind of style that Luke Hughes has, because he's not as flashy offensively as Quinn is, or as Brent Clark is in my opinion, but I do think that stability would be nice to have on the left side. So, I don't know, that's just kind of my thought process about it. If you're a Red Wings fan, let me know in the comments what you think about this idea here. If the Red Wings finish first overall in the lottery, where they give the worst teams higher odds, but they say the caveat is you can't finish top 3 next year in the draft lottery, how do you feel about that? Is it kind of weird because you're like, yeah, we're not even going to be good next year, even with a first overall pick? That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Also, if you're a Sens fan, too, it must be weird for you guys as well because you guys are in a really stacked Canadian division as one of the worst teams over there. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video. So that Trolls 99, and bye.